Hi, friends. Welcome to the library, or welcome back to the library. Today I have with me author Teddie Peacock. I'm super excited to be chatting. We've been chatting a little bit before the recording started, and your story is really interesting. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us about how you got started writing and kind of your backstory?
Absolutely, Natalie. First, I'd like to say thank you so much for having me this
Of
morning. I'm so
course.
excited to be
Yeah.
here and to talk to all your listeners and hopefully a bunch of readers out there. Um, I have always been a writer, but I guess I kind of fell into writing because of what I did academically. I
Mhm.
have 2 degrees in English, and I spent 11 years teaching college writing courses to freshmen, and so I had to do a lot of academic writing
Mhm.
during that time. And I always have ideas and always have a creative mind going. So I just started kind of writing for myself to kind of decompress from all of the academic writing and research and critical thinking and all that. And honestly, from reading so many freshman writing compositions that sometimes made me want to poke my holes out. So I'm like, oh, well, just need to kind of do something for myself. So that's kind of how it started, actually. Um, Writing professionally as an author, as a fiction author, really that journey began for me at the end of last year. I am in a neighborhood book club. We moved to a new state and I needed to make some friends. And somebody posted in our Facebook forum, neighborhood group, wanted to start a new book club. And although their interests didn't really align with mine as far as what they were planning to read, I needed to
Mhm.
make friends. And so I went to
Yeah.
book club and I'm like, hey, I kind of like this. And as we started reading, I said, I think I can write stories like that. And so that's kind of how that evolved. And I wrote and published my debut book January of this year at
Oh,
59. So
yay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've published my second book. It's getting ready to come out in paperback very soon. So, and I'm working on third and working on fourth. So, yeah, it's been exciting.
I love that. I kind of sat here and was like, story of my life. I need to make friends too.
Well, mine is a little bit. I am a very extroverted introvert. My
Mhm.
husband was in the military. I was a military wife for like almost 17 years. So I, I had a lot of social interaction all the time. I was a teacher, a writing instructor for 11 years.
Mhm.
A lot of interaction, and I'm in a life chapter now that I'm kind of like, okay, I've been by myself and kind of solitary long enough, so I need to kind of get out there and meet people and kind of
Yeah.
get out of my head a little bit. So yeah, it's been a great experience. I would highly recommend book club to everybody. It is a great thing.
Yeah. And the one thing that I like about book club is you get all different types and walks of life. And
Yes,
if you allow it to be more than just we're talking about the books we're reading, you can find all different types of experiences and just ways of thinking. We did
yes,
one at work. My job had one for a while. And of course, we were a little restricted on what we were reading just because it needed to involve leadership and business and growth mindset and that sort of thing. Not necessarily
right.
bad things to read, just not, some of the fantasy or romance some of us wanted to read, which
Didn't make your heart sing, did
no, not
it?
exactly. But the best thing about it is that I was one of the youngest in the room at 24, which
Right.
not exactly shocking because when you're looking in a business, for the most part, people my age are not always sitting in an HR office. We're not always
Sure.
tethered to the desk yet. It
Yes,
was
yes,
very
yes.
interesting to be in that room, and it was ladies only. So I'm in a room full of women who are at minimum 10 years older than me.
Right, right. And
Plus.
that's a good thing. It can be kind of like a scary thing, but because you
Yeah.
feel like that you might not have a lot in common with older people or,
Hmm.
people who are just a little different from you. Our neighborhood book club is called Book Club is my alibi. I
Hmm.
finally was so persistent. I said, we really have to have a name. I keep talking about my awesome book club and I just keep calling it book club. So we finally do have a name. We range in ages from 27 to me. I am the elder member. I'm
Hmm.
59, will soon be hanging on by my fingernails, soon to be 60. And so you're right. We have a lot of life experiences. And even though we live in the same neighborhood, we're different. And we are more than really just a book club. I mean, we are and we're all women. We are very support of each other. There's
Hmm.
10 of us and we support each other in everything. We celebrate birthdays. We've had several members become grandparents for the first time. We
Aww.
celebrate job promotions.
Hmm.
And my book club did a book launch party for me for my debut, which was really fun.
Oh,
We
that's
are
sweet.
really, and it is convenient because we all live, we live in a big neighborhood, but we all live
Hmm. Hmm.
closely. But it has been so nice. Well, one thing that's really been cool is I've learned all of the language that I didn't need to keep up with. This is when I'm
Hmm.
talking to my daughters. They don't talk to me using the same language that they do with their friends.
Right, right.
So
Hmm.
I've, learned to kind of stay current with all the language and kind of what's going on. And, we talk about a lot and sometimes we all actually read the book. That doesn't happen often. But we're very supportive and we're probably unique because we do all live close together. We're all
Yeah,
female, kind of have similar life experiences. But if you can join a book club, do because it would just broaden your horizons tremendously.
absolutely. And the best thing about that is like whenever you start going through, once you formed that connection, if your life starts to take a turn and you start to see things shifting for you, you have a crew standing behind
Yes,
you. And even if
absolutely.
that's just your escape crew, like they're just there to help you kind of get away from the chaos for a little bit, having those people to have your back and be there, and know that they're going to support you. And even sometimes having that advice, because for instance, with my workbook club, they watched me get married 3 years ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Right.
How exciting.
Thank you. Right after I got engaged is when I started working for them, and they watched me through my engagement and get married, and now working through the first few years of my marriage. And it was really, really helpful to be able to go around the room and to have women who had 10 and 15 and 20 years of marriage under their belt.
Right.
And they offered words of wisdom through that time. And then I have since had the chance to go through and sit with these women again because I have been diagnosed with PCOS. So there is a very large likelihood that I will not be able to have children, which is something that sits a little heavy on my heart. Not that it's never something I never wanted, but just no longer seeing that as a possibility in the
Right.
future is a little difficult. And so then being able to go to them and be like, because we are women in the South, it is also laced in biblically sound things. So I got some sound advice from some women of the same faith, and then also some sound advice from women who were not of the faith but of knowledge. And so it's nice to have that sounding board through all walks of life, and to know that some of them have been divorced and remarried, and some of them have been in the same marriage since they were young, and some of them have been in that marriage for maybe only the last 20 years. Our oldest member is nearly 65, and she had 6 or 7 children herself, and she's been divorced and married another gentleman and gained a couple of extra children, and she now has grown children grandchildren, and I believe she may even have like a great grandbaby or two.
Oh,
And
wow.
so and then watching some of my coworkers become grandparents for the first time, and knowing that their kids are now moving off into college, and we watched them go through high school the past couple of years. And so it was just being able, to see that walk of life and know that
Sure.
we all have something connect us. And it is a
Absolutely.
place of, because as human beings, we're not supposed to be solitary anyways. It is in our nature to gather and have community. And so being able to do that, even though this is work related, it is not always one of those, just because we work together doesn't mean I can't come to you.
Well, yes, absolutely. I think you explained that perfectly. My group has been together for maybe 3 years in January, and we don't argue. We all really get along. And I'm thinking, even as you were saying that, so many of our group members have gone through so many things, and some of them have
Mm-hmm.
been very positive, like my book launch. That was exciting and positive, and the grandchildren and all the fun things. But we've also gone through some difficult things, and it has been really nice to feel comfortable enough with the group and trusting of our group enough to know
Mm-hmm.
that we can share. And sometimes that's all that you have to do is just share. You don't necessarily need a lot of advice. The advice is good, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily need a lot of feedback or opinions. Sometimes you just need to be able to put it out there, and you know that you're among supportive people.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right that we need community, and we need to feel a sense of belonging, and that's one thing, particularly among women. I mean, just in general, but particularly among women, no matter what our ages are or who we are or where we come from, we all have shared experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's important. We need to lift each other up and be supportive. And it does a lot of times go far beyond books. I think, that's just the starting point a lot of times. And I'm glad that you found such a great group to help you navigate life. That sounds awesome. And I really wish that for everybody.
Me as well, honestly. It's really eye opening, especially when you're young and you find a group that has such shared life experiences, but you're in all stages of life. And you're seeing all stages of life throughout your group. It puts a lot into perspective, because I
Yes.
joined this group when I was 20. It's been 4 years. So, um,
Still figuring out life
yes,
at
yes,
20.
exactly. Yeah, and that was the thing. It was like I'm still trying to figure out what works for me. I consider myself a baby adult because I'm still in the first real 10 years of my
Right.
adulthood. So I have not quite reached all seasons of life, but I've been pretty close. And my life in particular has not always been the easiest. My childhood, I struggled quite a bit. It just is what it is. But it is from the perspective of someone who was a studious child and did not always have a lot of friends and people to fall back on. Um, and then getting into a solid group of women. Um, Even though they are people that I work with, I would consider them my friends outside of the job as well. And seeing that different walks of life and being able to go to them with anything, I feel like more than just having that connection and having that backing,
Right.
my
Absolutely.
naivety is not quite as what it was, and that comes
Right.
with life anyways in maturing, as you get older. But you get a sense of perspective of
Sure.
how not just complex life is, but precious,
Yeah.
because it
Well,
is so easy for me to see this one woman who is only 10 years my senior has kids who are just now going into high school, and I'm likely to watch them graduate soon because I probably will not be going to a different job. But when I started, my boss, her kids were freshmen in high school, and now she has two in college and one in their senior year. And I thinking like I'm 24, but I'm also the closest to the last one who was in high school. And when I was in it, those years felt like they were the most fortuitous. Like they were the creme de la creme of this is what my life will be. And now seeing that, now that I'm out of it and I'm getting to watch other kids go through it, I'm like, those were nothing. They were, those 4 years, while they were very much part of shaping who I am today, they are not my whole being as I thought they were at 18.
Sure, absolutely. Well, if it makes you feel any better, there's some days that I still feel like a baby adult as
That's the
well.
easiest way for me to explain. Like, while I am an adult, yes. And I told this to my grandmother not too long ago. I was like, I understand everybody makes mistakes, and I understand that I will continue to make mistakes until I am well into my 60s and older, should I be granted to live that long by the powers that be. But I still very much, even though I am married and we own a home and we both have very good jobs and we are steady and comfortable in life, I still feel like I am a baby adult just barely getting the chance to walk on my own 2 feet.
I understand that.
It's hard. It is so hard. We're going to come back to the books though. So you were a reader as well as now officially a published author, but you've been a writer for a while. Do you feel like your studies and being a teacher or professor for so long had any large influence on what genre you chose to write?
Um, that's a good question. Probably not. I think the thing that was helpful for me as as a college writing instructor is that I'm able to write and I can do it quickly on deadline. I'm able to do quite a bit of editing and those kind of technical aspects. It took me a while and I still struggle with it sometimes because you read so much differently when you have that background and always analyzing books and analyzing writing and all that. The genre that I chose to write in, that I'm currently writing in, the mystery, suspense, psychological thriller genre. Actually, my book club that we were just speaking about, they influenced me to go in that direction because that was not a genre that I was very well read in. I had to read so many classics and what we call highbrow literature and kind of funny. It's changing quite a bit, but in the English and literature academic world, so much of what you read was written by old dead white guys, and that is changing. Thankfully, it is changing quite a bit. But so I'm very well read in a lot of areas, but I did not really read a lot in this genre. But my book club was so all about it. They love true crime. They love, everything related to the mystery, suspense, thriller. So I said, okay, I'll try it. And of course, I mean, you can't talk about the genre without not talking about the Queen, Frida McFadden. We read Frida McFadden, and she's the Queen. We bow down to the Queen, and I guess the reason that, I read some of these stories and they are so great and so wonderful. But being a Southerner, for those of you who are and can relate, I guess, are nosy by nature. We just want to know more. We want to know more. When you get that story, and in this genre, things are fast paced and they move along very quickly, and you want things tied up pretty neatly. You don't want to know early who done it, but you want to know the clues, and at the end, and you want to be really shocked, page turning. You can't guess it to the end, kind of thing. But I guess I'm like this nosy person. I don't just think about that, I'm thinking about why in the
Mm-hmm.
world did they do that? I want to know the motivation behind why people act the way they do. And I mean, we talked about a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
environment and growing up, and is it nature, is it nurture, that kind of thing. And so that is what I find like really interesting about writing in this genre, and it's in my books. The readers have told me, and I'm glad, and because it's how I wanted it to be. My books are very character driven. They're very character detailed, and
Mm-hmm.
I think they're relatable people. But you get to learn a lot about the characters because in a lot of books I've read, and it's not just in my genre, it's in a lot quite often. Unless you do that first person point of view where you're really in people's heads all the time, you don't find out more about the characters. You don't know a lot about the characters and what motivates them to do what they do. And so that's why I'm kind of interested in this genre and kind of turning it on its head a little bit and focusing on, well, why in the world would this character do that, or why were they thinking that? And it is more that deeper kind of psychological approach to it. And I think readers are liking it, and it's a lot of fun to write. And it honestly, it it
Yeah,
helps
yeah.
tame that nosiness I have, even with those imaginary characters. And I get it too. It comes a little bit from, and it's a good idea to tune it out, but sometimes we're so overwhelmed with
Mm-hmm.
technology and media, we just can't. But in our news every day, in the local broadcasts and national, international, anything you go to, almost has any kind of news related outlet, you see people in the news doing all these crazy things, and then you see their neighbors and their friends and their relatives and people they go to school with, and they come back and say, I would have never
Mm-hmm.
expected this person to do this. You see it every day, and it's like, oh, they were so quiet, they didn't speak much, or I never saw this coming, and that kind of thing. I mean, it happens in the
Mm-hmm.
real world around us all the time. So I like to kind of explore in this genre. I think it's a perfect genre to kind of dig in a little bit into people's psyche and kind of, oh, wow, they're regular, ordinary people, and this happened to them, and this is how they reacted. And I like for my readers to try to put themselves in the same situation and say, how you know, we
Mm-hmm.
always think we're better than we are. And we always say, I would
Mm-hmm.
never do that. I would never act that way. I can't believe, and especially, people of faith, we like to believe that we're trying so hard to be these really good people, and when something happens to you that knocks you out of your ordinary life, you have
Mm-hmm.
no idea how you're going to react. You just don't. And so I kind of like to explore that part of it. And the mystery, suspense, psychological thriller is the perfect platform to do that. So it's been fun.
Do you
I've
think that's
enjoyed
also where
it.
you draw like inspiration for characters?
Inspiration, yes, yes, some. You have to be super careful about it, but some come
Mm-hmm.
straight from the news stories. Things that everybody's talking about, and situations that I know of personally. We had that military background, so I was able to
Right.
meet so many different people with so many different life experiences from so many places in the world and different walks of lives, and you will not believe the stories I've heard and some of the things that I've seen. The characters, and you have to be so careful. Uh, Sometimes they subconsciously are
Mm-hmm.
drawn from real people that I know. Just little things that stick out with like people I know, people I've come in contact with, people I've read about, and that kind of all in my mind, whether I really am intentional about it or not, it helps form these characters. In fact, there's a character right now that I want to write so badly, and she's drawn straight from real life, and I'm not
Mm.
sure that I need to do it. So we're probably gonna have to sit on that. But yes, in fact, I've had people ask me with both my first and second book, were you writing about so and so? And say, no, not intentionally. I would never
Mm-hmm.
just intentionally put somebody's whole life experience in writing without their permission, or at least giving them the heads up. But I think subconsciously we store so
For
many
sure.
experiences and thoughts and just ideas, and they just kind of come out, and so you get this composite. But yeah, the news, particularly in this genre, I'm able to think about things that I see and hear, and then say, "Hey, would this make a good story?" And
Yeah.
oh, well, where can I go with that? And how would I get these ordinary people to to react? I will probably, and I'll say this, and then I will live to regret it, because things you say you will never do, somehow, sometimes you end up doing. But I will say probably, I will probably never
Yeah.
write about serial killers. Probably not. That's just not something that really interests me, because that's not an
No,
ordinary
not at all.
person
I
to
feel like in
me.
that situation, you
So,
would have to jump into someone
yeah,
else's psyche. And that always ends up like in a very
exactly.
dangerous.
You
Hmm.
know, it's kind of dark in there. Even in my first book, in Secret Keepers, there is a character who gets murdered early on. He's part of this friend group of six that meet in college and become lifelong friends. He ends up being a serial sexual predator, and I can say that without giving too much of it away, because
Hmm.
it's, pretty early on in the book. He gets murdered, and you kind of get the idea of what's going on. And even that, and I try not to go too much into that,
For
because
sure.
those can be dark places, and you've got to either imagine things or research and that kind of thing. And no, there are some lines that are too far, and so yeah, I try to be really careful. I will say though that in my second book I did name some of my characters after
Hmm.
people that I know in real life. It was just a little nod, kind of to do honor to
Yeah.
people that I know that have had a positive impact in my life. So some of the characters are named after people that I know, but yeah, that's about as far as I go. I believe that even in today's world, with all the technology and the fact that we really don't have any
Yeah.
real super privacy, I still try to respect people's privacy. I believe that people still should have some privacy, and so I do try to be really careful. Although I hear great ideas every day, there are some that will never be written. And I'll just
Yeah.
leave it at
There
that.
are some things that probably should not see the light of day. There are a lot of stories that I imagine someone from uh, service, whether that be the military or, CIA, FBI type situation, they see a lot of horrors.
Sure.
Even medical field, there are a lot of really horrible things that are done that people have to witness, and some of the things just should not be.
Right. Well, that
Hmm.
just does not resonate with me, and I know other people, and great, go for it. But my time and energy would not be well spent in that direction. And so I do try to, even though we are making up things as we go, there's always some germ of truth, I think, in everything that you write. And so I do try to be really
Yeah.
cautious and respectful, and even in writing things that I know would be triggering for people, I do try. For me, there's certain lines I don't cross, and that's just me. And everybody has their own way of doing things, but there are just certain lines that I'm not willing to cross in my writing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I feel like everybody has their point, their spot that is that is no longer something they're comfortable or they feel like they're well versed enough. And there's nothing wrong with that. You have enough respect for
no,
yourself and for others who do have the the ability to explore those areas, which is, in this day and age, it goes a long way to know that
Yes,
that
it
you would
does.
give somebody else the space to still be able to explore that, because a lot of and I
Absolutely.
don't want to say a lot of, but it does seem like a lot of today's society is very much a, if I don't feel I could ever have this space, or the mental capacity to veer down that path, I would then turn around and condemn somebody else for doing it.
No, no, I'm not about that at all. I am about people doing their thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you do. I'm not going to judge you because I don't need to be in your lane. I need to
Right.
be taking care of me and being responsible for myself and what is true for me. And I don't need to be telling everybody else what they need to be doing. I do enough of that probably with my daughters, and that's as far as that needs to go. And they don't appreciate that very much on some days either. So I have enough just managing me and trying to do what I feel like that I need to be doing. And I I believe that there are things, for me that might not resonate and might seem too far from me, but I am not going to tell other people what they need to do or shouldn't do as authors, as publishers, as readers,
Yeah.
as producer. I'm not going to do that
Mm-hmm.
because we need to be respectful of each other's space.
Yeah.
And it is in all that I can do to manage me and get my ideas on paper and get them out there for hopefully the readers who want to read it. And I don't have time to be managing anybody else.
Yeah. Me neither. So we know you write mystery, thriller, true crime. That's kind of your thing right now. Have you ever considered or wanted to dabble in another genre?
Yes, actually, that's an excellent question. Next year,
Okay.
I hope, fingers crossed, and we're going to work really hard. I am planning on releasing a suspenseful romance, so that will be a
Ooh.
crossover
Yeah.
between the two genres. Well, the main reason is because I know that romance is queen
It is.
in the world. I mean, it is it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have so many readers out there that love and crave, good romance stories.
Mm-hmm.
And suspenseful romance gives me a way of combining those two. So I am actually working kind of pre production right now on something that I hope will come out next summer.
Okay.
And it is well, it actually serves three.
Okay.
It actually serves three purposes. It will be in that suspense genre, which I hope will appeal to the readers that really like that genre. And we're going to have a romance. I'm not exactly sure what direction that is going to go. It will probably have a happily ever after. We will see. And it will also have a military theme in it.
Mhm.
And what to do to explore with that is not all of the political things and all that with serving in the military and military action and all that kind of stuff, but I'm hoping to be able to use it as a platform to explore, and so that more readers kind of understand what it is like to be the ones who are left behind,
Mhm.
who are not going out there and serving and doing that thing, but how it impacts relationships and individuals and that kind of thing. And it's going to be a kind of a, as you mentioned earlier, when you were considered yourself a baby adult,
Mhm.
one of the characters, the female main character, is going to be around that
Yeah.
age, a little bit older, maybe just 22, 23, kind of just launching into her real adult life and trying
Mhm.
to find herself. It's going to be kind of a growing up kind of story. So it is challenging, and we will see what we do with that. But yeah, that is one thing that I definitely am interested in taking a look at. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like.
Fingers crossed for you.
Thank you.
So when you're writing your stories, when you're looking at what comes next. Are you like a plotter, or are you more of a like a quilter? Like I have certain pieces and then I put the entire story together.
A plotter or a pantser, run around
Yes.
trying to pull your pants up. Well, I probably a combination of both, honestly, Natalie.
Hmm.
When I first start thinking about all these ideas and they come so fast and furious, and I
Hmm.
just get so excited and just go and go and go, and what next and what if and all that kind of stuff. And so I kind of write all that down because it's a little chaotic. And then I found, for me, so that I don't get so anxious and
Hmm.
overwhelmed, I do any kind of research I need to do for background, just so I know what I'm talking about as much as I can. But I have found that I do need to plot. I plot quite a bit.
Hmm.
Um, I Not chapter by chapter, but first I get that germ of idea, I kind of run it through my mind. I ask a couple of people, "Hey, would you read this?
Hmm.
Do you think this is something you would read and other people would read?" And so I start there. I take all those kind of crazy, chaotic ideas I wrote down and try to make sense of them. And then I take each character. I say each character that I think is going to appear, I write a big list of what ifs, what could happen for them.
Hmm.
And then I do really pretty detailed character studies. And then after I do that, I get that general idea. Then the characters start talking to me. Sometimes that's trouble
Hmm.
because they want to go in this direction that I had not planned. And I'm like, whoa, we have to, kind of have this internal conversation. But um, I have found that plotting and doing detailed character studies really helps me kind of knock back some of that anxiety
Hmm.
that you get of, oh my goodness, am I doing the right thing? Are readers going to like it? Is this going to be any good? Is this going to be exactly like somebody else's written? This looks like garbage, all of that. If I know generally where it's going, and if I feel like something's not working plot wise, I just kind of sit back and think about it, and I try to put myself in the mindset of that character and say, okay, well, what would they do instead?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's a big process, and it doesn't really sound organized, but it works. It works, and at the end, it comes together pretty well. In my debut book, Secret Keepers, it was the easiest thing to write. And I know people think, gosh, you're not being truthful, but I am. It was just once I kind of got that idea, the characters started coming to me, and I sat down and plotted it, and I really wrote it like first draft like in 6 weeks.
Hmm.
It was just came together really well. It all kind of fit together, and really it's kind of interesting and maybe even a little odd that it worked that way because it has a lot of characters.
Yeah.
And for a first book to have so many characters and so many subplots and kind of all different things going on, I don't know, it just all kind of came together. But I think that it was mainly just because I just took all those crazy ideas and put them in some structure that made sense, and then just adjusted as I felt like it needed to be adjusted. And I know some people, and I think it's just personality and just your work style. Some people just are very structured and they need to go from point A to point B,
Hmm.
and there is no veering off. I start looking at something or start working on something, and then I say, oh, look at that butterfly. And then I'm off looking at the butterfly. So I do have to be structured enough to keep myself on track, but I also am really open to creative things that just kind of come. And
Yeah.
if they work, they work, and I use them.
Yeah. Ooh. I have a lot of people who can't plot because it actually does the opposite rather than steady them. It gives them like hives or something, and I'm like, it's gonna be okay. Is what works for you does not work for everybody. I probably would not be able to plot. I feel like once I had a scene, I probably would end up just sitting down trying to write the entire book in one entire day.
Sure. I get that. And one thing that that does work for me when I have those things come.
Mm-hmm.
And you do, I mean, you get them in your mind. You're like, oh, wow, this is great. And if you don't get it written down right away, it's gone.
Yeah.
And so when I get these, usually mine in dialogue, I struggle with dialogue sometimes. And so, because I'm trying really hard to be authentic to
Mm-hmm.
how that character would speak and think. And so when I get these little running conversations, I try really hard to go write them down. And I'll go write them down. And then I decide later, well, is this usable?
Yeah.
Is this something that works? Does it work with the framework of what I already think is going to happen? Does it carry the plot quickly? And I read somewhere that as a writer, that everything you do needs to advance the plot in some way. And that's so much pressure, but it is true. Everything you do that you put in there, it needs to advance that in some way
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense and that resonates with your readers and pushes it forward. But particularly in my genre, it's got to go at a pretty quick pace, and I have to be real careful about that because I like to do a lot of backstory and really detailed character development. So we got to be real careful about, or I do, really careful about, what goes in and what comes out. But when I get those just out of the blue things that come to me, I always try to write it down and use it in some way because I feel like that those are coming from somewhere other than just in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Those are those moments, that divine, I call it the divine creativity,
Mm-hmm.
where everything just kind of comes together. It's like, oh my gosh, that is perfect. And so I try to use it in some way. But yeah, I absolutely get what you're saying. But for me, I do have to plot a little bit and outline a little bit, or I would be all over the place, and it might confuse readers. So I do try to kind of stay in line with what I hope to
Yeah.
do as much as possible.
Do you feel like being part of the book club maybe helps or hinders your writing?
That is a really good question. Really good. No, I don't think it's hindered my writing
Mm-hmm.
in any way. I have and you know this as well. You have to be so careful who you ask to read your work while it's still in
Yeah.
progress.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a really good alpha/beta reader who's extremely well read in the genre. She's one of my good friends, and I trust her enough, and she trusts me enough that she will tell me if something's not working,
Mm-hmm.
or if it doesn't click or it doesn't resonate or whatever. And she's actually in my target audience. She's in that demographic.
Yeah.
And so I think you need to know like who you're writing for. So that is helpful. And my second book, I ran it by my book club. They all read it in an ebook format before it came out. And but I had to really distinguish, hey, we're friends. We are going to be friends. If you hate this book,
Yeah.
we are still going to be friends because your friendship is more valuable to me than your opinion about something I've written, because you have every right in this world to hate it.
Yeah.
if it just doesn't if it just doesn't vibe with you, we're friends, and that is important to me. But I also, on the other hand, I want you to tell me if you don't like it, things you don't like about it, because I'm not going to hold it against you in any way, because they are like my target demographic
Absolutely.
group. And so and my first book club night with my first book was actually with my book club group, and I was more nervous about it than anything else because they were my friends,
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't necessarily want them to come back and say, "Oh, I didn't like this," or "I didn't like that." But I wanted them to be able to speak freely. I said, "Please speak freely. If
Mm-hmm.
there's anything you didn't like, or you didn't understand, or you just didn't think went well together, or whatever, absolutely, because that's helpful for me." And it was in that environment that I felt safe in that environment. It wasn't out while like you're looking at a book review, which you probably shouldn't do, but
Right.
sometimes we do that, and people say, "Oh, I hated this." I hated everything about it. And because I know that these are supportive people of me and they would provide constructive criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I tried to work through that on the front side. And then with my second book, we've not done it as a book club selection. I don't know if we're going to or not. I'm going to leave that up to them.
Yeah.
And if they want to, great. If they don't, that's okay too. And I just want them to be supportive of me.
Yeah.
And they can hate my work, and that's great. And sometimes you do. Sometimes we just do. I'll be honest. Sometimes the things that we select in book club, they are wonderfully written works,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe I just don't vibe with them when I'm reading it,
Yeah, absolutely.
or and I would never say, "Oh, I hate this," or not. I just say, "Well, you know." Okay. Sometimes that's just all the answer I have is okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we all have just personal likes and dislikes and that kind of thing. They are very encouraging. So that has really helped me and it's pushed me out of my comfort zone a lot because honestly, I believe if it was not for this book club, I probably would have never really written that first book. I would always say later when I have more time, when it seems right, when
Mm-hmm.
I've done more research. And my family needs me more right now. You make up all these excuses.
Oh yeah.
And I kind of mentioned in passing one day as a joke, I said, I think I could write this. And they're like, well, why hadn't you written it already? And so that's been really nice. So yeah, that's a great question. But like as you do a lot of times in work and other areas of your life, you can be friends with people and you can be really good friends with people, but sometimes you have to know what hat you're wearing
Yes.
and where your lane is, and you can be great work friends with people, but sometimes there's a time that you need to be in your work zone, and sometimes you can be in your friend zone, and sometimes it's kind of hard to navigate that. But yeah, we've done it pretty well, I believe. And if I ran an idea by my book club and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about writing about this," and kind of give them a short outline, little short summary,
Mm-hmm.
and the response was not very good across the board, I probably know that one's got to go back in the drawer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're a really good sounding board for me, and I very much appreciate that.
That's good though. Having a sounding board, especially as a writer, it's really important. Being able to have people you trust to go in and read the first drafts, because I feel like every author
Right.
that I've spoken to so far is just like, I hate my first drafts. Like my first drafts
Yeah,
are so bad, missing so much information. Just
sure. Absolutely. We've all been there.
so do you we know you read while you write, but do you read the same genre?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And well, within our book club, I, I, most of the time I really need to be writing, but I do love to read. I try to read a little bit every day. I'm bad about reading cereal boxes. I love to read, I read like whatever it is. And sometimes I get going too far down rabbit holes
Yeah.
when I do that. Usually the main things I read is whatever my book club is reading at the time. That's my priority. I feel like I have a priority to them to do that, to do my part. And then and we're pretty good about reading a mix. We'll usually read like true crime. True crime is difficult for me.
Mhm.
And I know it has to be difficult to write because you have to fact check so much and be accurate. And some of it I love, but I don't know. Sometimes I find it a little difficult. But we read true crime. We read, a lot in the mystery suspense. And then we'll alternate. We'll throw in a historical romance usually, or we've been reading a lot of books about World War II. that have been really popular in the historical fiction genre are, I think, one of the best books we've read recently. And even if you're not a, suspense reader, Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers
Mm-hmm.
for Murder. It's one of the funniest books I have ever read in my life. And so we do try to, because a lot of the subject matter is kind of deep and
Mm-hmm.
dark, and you get so tired of reading about violence and bad behavior and stuff. We do a palate cleansing in between. We're going to read a couple of romances in the beginning of next year. I don't recommend books for book club. I just don't. But we get a lot of really good recommendations. Sometimes I will say, hey, it's October. Why don't we read something about witches or folklore or whatever?
Yeah.
And I try hard. I did make one book club recommendation, a book in our genre that I had not read, but it was just, and it got incredible reviews. And as I started reading it, I asked my book club to pull it because I said, oh goodness, this is, I don't, it was just one of those books that just did not resonate well with me. And it was inaccurate and not really factual in some places. And I was just like, no. And I decided not to recommend ever again because I didn't want my friends who are so busy. We are all so very busy. I didn't want them to spend time with a book that didn't seem like it was worth the time that you spent reading it. I think everybody's kind of had those experiences before. So, but yeah, primarily to get back to answering your question, I try to read whatever we are reading. If I have any extra time, which is not often because I usually need to be working on my own
Mm-hmm.
work and not procrastinating, I love Jane Austen, and part of that is because of what my degree work was in college. But I love reading Jane Austen because it just really takes you out of all of our technology and the way that our world is today. I love reading about society way back then, and I guess it's a good thing I didn't live in Jane Austen society because I'd be in trouble all the
Me
time.
too.
And relationships and Pride and Prejudice. I have read that book so many times, but the thing that is really cool about that book, it's kind of my comfort read, is that no matter that it was written so long ago, it is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Human nature is the same. Our manners certainly have changed, and culture has changed, and how we think about the world, society has changed. But we are the same as we were during her time. We judge people.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of prejudices and preconceived notions about people and things, and we're always, and aren't all of our modern romances kind of a spin, a lot of them a spin on Pride and Prejudice, with all the miscommunication and the misdirection, and one character doesn't realize that they're in love with the other one, and so it, that would be, that's probably my go-to if I have any extra time, which is rare these
Yeah.
days.
I think I don't know that I have a favorite. I read a lot of Shakespeare between high school and
Bless you.
college, and
Bless you.
Shakespeare is not at all easy to read.
Oh, it is not accessible, is it? And it gets less and less the further we get away from that old world language. As an undergrad, I think I temporarily lost my mind and I took a whole semester on Shakespeare. And the stories, oh my word, aren't the stories incredible?
They really are. The stories themselves are incredible once you can get past the language and actually get a feel for what's happening. Like if someone was able, Hamlet, just so many stories that if were to be retold in a More
Right.
common English.
Well, no, that old world English, and I think that's a struggle. What with students,
Mm-hmm.
particularly, and usually those.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate you tuning in. Unfortunately, we had to cut this episode short due to some technical issues, but don't forget to go check out Teddie Peacock's social medias and handles and get all of the latest and greatest information on her upcoming works. And tune in next week for more great episodes. Thanks.